Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram Ram
Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Yashodanandana Rajajanarana Jamuna Tera Vanachari Jamuna Tera Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabe Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Jaya Śrīmad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Ananta Bhakti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki Prem Sri Kaho Sri Krishna Sturi Jajaguru Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki Jaya Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinatha Shyam Radha Giri Govardhana ki Sri Vrindavan ki Sri Maya Bhagavatam ki Sri Guru Shadam Chatra ki Sri Ganga Maya ki Jai Sri Guru Maya ki Jai Bhakti Devi ki Jai Sri Devi Maharani ki Jai Hari Ram Sankirtan ki Jai Jai Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to CC Guru and Gauranga. Oh, glories to Shiva Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 We're reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 9, Liberation, Chapter 9, the dynasty of Amsuma. Text number 7. Is that right? Tarayashyati te vegam Rudras Vatma Shrivinam Vishvam Satyavatantushu Dharayashyati Devegam Rudrastvatma Saririnam Yasminotam Protam Vishvam Satyavatantushu
Dharayashyati Devegam
Dharayashyati Devegam Rudrastvatma Saririnam Yasmin utam idam protam Vishvam Satyavatantishu. Vishvam Satyavatantishu Dharayashyati Devegam Rudrastvatva Saririnam Yasminotam idam protam Vishvam Satyavatantishu. Dharayashyati will sustain. We have the word Gadadhara. Right? What does that mean? Gadadhara. What does that mean? Or what about Haladhara? Here. Who's that? Balaram. But what's he called? He's holding the plough, hala. So here, it's interesting. Will sustain, or this word could be will hold. Dharayashyati. And it's interesting, I looked up dharaya, and that means the flow, right? The flow. So this is talking about the Ganga. This is, first of all, who's talking here? Bhagirath. Yes. And who's he talking to? Mother Ganga. Always good to know who's talking and who's listening in the pages of the Bhagavatam. Otherwise you can be easily lost. So Dharayashyati will sustain. Te, your, Vegam, force of the waves. Rudra, Lord Shiva. To, indeed, Atma, the Supersoul. Sharirinam, of all embodied souls. Yasmin, in whom Otam is situated in its longitude. Idam, this whole universe. Protam, latitude. Vishvam, the whole universe. Shati, a cloth. Iva, as. Tantushu, in threads. Like a cloth woven of threads, extending for its length and breadth. This entire universe, in all its latitude and longitude, is situated under different potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva is the incarnation of the Lord, and thus he represents the super soul in the embodied soul. He can sustain your forceful waves on his head. Purport: the water of the Ganges is supposed to rest on the head of Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who sustains the entire universe by different potencies. Lord Shiva is described in the Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, text 45. Chiram yata dadivikara visesha yogat sanjayate nahitata pritagashti hetoho ya sambhutam apitapa samupaiti karyad Govinda Mari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Milk changes into yogurt. Chiram yata dadi. Right? Chiram means milk and dadi means what? What does dadi mean? Yogurt. Very good. But actually, yogurt is constitutionally nothing but milk. Right? Yogurt is milk. But it's not milk. It's yogurt. This is Achincha Beda Abeda Tattva. Right? In action. Similarly, Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, assumes the form of Lord Shiva for the special purpose of material transactions. I offer my obeisances at Lord Govinda's lotus feet. Lord Shiva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the same sense that yogurt is also milk, although at the same time it is not milk. Right? It's milk, but it's not milk. And if you put yogurt in milk, what happens to the milk? Huh? It turns to yogurt. That's interesting, isn't it? So do we put yogurt in milk? Yes, if we want curd. If we want paneer, we do, yes. But otherwise we don't. We keep them well apart. Because we know they're different actions. Right? For the maintenance of the material world. Now, why? Why? For the maintenance of the material world, there are three incarnations. Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara, Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is Vishnu in an incarnation for the mode of ignorance. The material world exists predominantly in the mode of ignorance. Did you know that? No. So that's proven. Right? Therefore, Lord Shiva is compared here to the longitude and the latitude of the entire universe, which resembles a cloth woven of threads extending for both its length and breadth. Right? So, length, longitude, breadth, latitude. Right? This is how we, on the map of the world, we have the longitude and the latitude, measured by degrees, right? On the globe. of the planet. Okay. Om Jnanati Mirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jehina Tasmaye Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kada Mahiyam Tadati Svabadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishvaram. Okay, so this is very interesting. Mother Ganga is deeply concerned about her entrance into the material world. Because of the force of her waves pouring into the material world, and she didn't want to immediately go to the lower planetary systems, to the hellish planets, where all the sinful people are, basically. Right? And so she asked Maharaj Bhagirath, how will the force, and it's here in the word for word, Vegam. We have that verse in the beginning of the Upadeshamrita. Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udarapasta Vegam, Itam. Yeah. So, Vega means force or pushing, right? So, similarly used, that word's used here to describe the waves, unstoppable force. So that unstoppable force of Mother Ganga's waves needs to be upheld by a very, very powerful personality. And so Maharaj Bhagirath is assuring Mother Ganga that that person who will sustain or hold, here, Dara Yishyati, Dhara, especially the word Dhara, hold, Yishyati, Te Vegam, the force of the waves, will be Rudra, Lord Shiva. Rudra is an expansion of Lord Shiva, who's also described here as Atma, Sharirinam, the super soul of all souls, right, or of all embodied souls. And then he's likened here to a cloth. Right? The material creation is likened to a cloth, which is interesting because, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, basically the material world is a place of what? Misery. Okay, but in the verse, what it's described as, or in the purport actually, what is it described as? What mode of material nature is Lord Shiva in charge of? Ignorance. Yeah, material world is a place of ignorance. And here Lord Shiva is likened to a cloth. Right? The material creation is likened to a cloth. And a cloth has threads in it, right? Longitudinal threads and latitudinal threads, right? So in that, it's interesting, that's an interesting example, because that ignorance is what covers us all, right? Just like a cloth. You can be covered over by a chadar, for example. In the wintertime, that's pretty much what we do, isn't it? Because it's cold. So we cover ourselves. How many of you are sleeping at night without any cover? Please raise your hands. Nobody? Yep. Govinda Hari told me the other day he went to the retreat, Gauranga Darshan's retreat, but he didn't take his sleeping bag. So then he got a terrible cold. Right? What's that called? Ignorance. Yes, ignorance. So, you know, being covered over by a cloth has its merits, especially in wintertime. But broadly, we can, you know, from this example, we get this understanding of Lord Shiva. And it's described how he's everywhere, right? Which is interesting, because I was thinking about this last night and this morning. We've got a two-dimensional example, right? Longitudinal, latitudinal, to describe Lord Shiva's presence within everything. But everything is actually three-dimensional when you think about it, right? But it's an example. And of course, an apt example, if we look at it in the context of Lord Shiva as the personification or the avatara, right, who controls the tamagun, right? Which is interesting, because in the verse that Srila Prabhupada quotes from the Brahma Samhita, what is it? Chiram yata dati vikara visesha yogat, right? It describes how Govinda, right? Govindam adipurusham tamaham brajami, manifests in the material world as the controller of the mode of ignorance, right? It's very special. Very hard. Lord Shiva's character and personality is sometimes hard to resolve, because there are opposing elements of his character that kind of don't make sense, right? But it's explained in this verse. He is Govinda, but also not Govinda, right? But he's an avatar. He's very special. He's a personality whose character is between the living entities, has their qualities, and Lord Vishnu and even Krishna, in between. In the Nectar of Devotion, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami describes the 64 qualities or characteristics of Krishna, right? And 50 of those characteristics are shared with us, the living entities, right? Krishna has them in full, but we only have them partially. And those qualities manifest, albeit partially, only when a devotee is, or when an individual is a pure devotee. Otherwise, we have qualities of the material realm, right? And this is pretty much the realm of Lord Shiva, right? And his realm of ignorance, being under the influence of the mode of ignorance, right? So the good qualities that we see in Krishna and that are manifest in us, especially for those who are showing signs of pure devotion, are counterbalanced, if you like, by the qualities that are exhibited by the living entities who are influenced primarily by the mode of ignorance. Right? So, instead of, say, being magnanimous, right? Generous, what's the opposite of magnanimity? Generous. What's the opposite of generosity? Huh? Selfish. How about selfish? Miserly. Yeah, selfish. Right? That's a symptom of them. Or broadly or naturally, an individual is generous in their natural state, but in a conditioned state of ignorance, selfish, mean, nasty. Right? So, Lord Shiva is still Krishna, right? But his action or his influence or his power is distributed differently all throughout the whole creation. Right? He's within the whole creation, just like Lord Vishnu, even Lord Brahma. They're aware of what's going on throughout the whole creation, just as Lord Brahma is. Just as Lord Shiva is. But the influence, because Lord Shiva is the controller or the manager, if you like, of the mode of ignorance, then the effect of his influence is different, brings out the ignorant qualities of the living entity. And as Prabhupada says, broadly, the material creation is influenced by ignorance. Huh? And because of that association with the material, with that mode of ignorance, then Lord Shiva doesn't manifest. He's Krishna, he's an avatara, but his manifestation of all of the qualities of Krishna is reduced. And so he has up to 55 of the 64 qualities of Krishna. And the good qualities of the living entities manifest, but the 5 extra qualities beyond those of the living entities, he manifests partially, as does Lord Brahma. Right? Lord Vishnu has the extra 5 qualities from the 55 to bring it up to 60. And then Krishna alone has 4 qualities that nobody else has. Right? That makes Krishna unique. Right? And attractive too. Those extra 4 qualities are those which make Krishna uniquely attractive beyond the qualities of Lord Vishnu. Very interesting. So, did a bit of research this morning, and let's have a look here. So I won't read all of the 50 qualities, but certainly not a bad read, I would suggest. And the 50th characteristic of which can be manifest by the living entity is the supreme controller. Right? The supreme controller. You can be the supreme controller if you are a pure devotee. So we see that in the character of Lord Brahma, a living entity who's empowered, and because of his purity. Even, Lord Vishnu, Lord Vishnu actually is, has the 55 characteristics in full, whereas the extra 5, the first one is, and these are partially manifest. This is what makes Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva different from the living entities, because apart from being, or on top of being the supreme controller, that's the 50th, right? 51 is changeless. Right? Changeless. 52, all cognizant. And it's very interesting because Lord Shiva here is described as the Supersoul, right? The Paramatma. And so that's how he's, that characteristic or that feature of Lord Shiva is manifest in his knowing everything that's going on within the creation. Ever fresh. That'd be a nice characteristic quality to have, wouldn't it? Ever fresh. When you wake up in the morning, ever fresh. Huh? Partially manifest in Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva. 54, possessing an eternal blissful body. Satchit Ananda. This is what makes Lord Shiva special, because even though he's influenced somewhat because of his association with the mode of ignorance, still he also, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says in his purport, he's mixed with knowledge come bliss, blissful, the blissful nature. I'll come back to that. Possessing all mystic perfections, right? So mystic, we see that in Lord Shiva. He's a mystical, powerful person, most powerful. That's why sometimes people worship him as God. Because Lord Shiva is all-powerful and he actually is God, they worship him as a God, but God's separate from Krishna. This is offensive, right? Because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that even though he's influenced or is subtly touched, I guess, or he touches the material energy, and that material energy is imbued with ignorance, even though there's that subtle interaction and that subtle influence, he still remains a servant. Right? Okay, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but as the incarnation of the Aguna avatar in charge of Tamagun, he doesn't become bewildered like the living entities who are conditioned by the mode of ignorance or by the modes of material nature, and who then forget their relationship with Krishna, and they forget that they're servants. We forget we're servants. Have you had that experience? Yep. We forget we're servants of Krishna. We wake up and we think, ooh, okay, what am I going to enjoy today? Huh? But Lord Shiva always remains a servant. Right? So yes, powerful and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but not the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his own right and as a competitor or as separate from Krishna. Very important. Right? So, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur explains this. I'll just yeah. Shambhu, that's Lord Shiva, is not a second Godhead other than Krishna. That's the first statement by Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, so that we understand. And then he says, if you entertain that idea, you commit an offence. Right? So what's the second offence in chanting Hare Krishna? We say it every day. To consider the names of the demigods to be independent, right? Of Lord Vishnu. Yeah. So if you think like that, aparadi, right? The supremacy of Shambhu in relationship to Govinda is subservient, right? He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's subservient to Govinda. So that's a very important point. And even though they're not different, right? Just as yogurt is the same as milk, still they are different. Right? So that's our Achincha Bheda Abheda Tattva. And how is he different? Because there's that addition of that, well here, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur describes it as an adulterating principle. So what does adulterating, if you adulterate something, what does that mean? Huh? Oh, yeah, can be in certain context. But in this context, what does adulterating mean? Mixing with. Yeah, mixing with an agent that interacts and changes the original quality of that which you're mixing it with. So in this case, mixing milk with yogurt creates what? More yogurt. If you want to keep your milk, don't mix it with yogurt. So what is that adulterating principle that changes the Supreme Personality of Godhead from Govinda to Lord Shiva? What is it? Is that a good question? What is it? What is it that makes Lord Shiva, even though he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so therefore is honoured and worshipped as good as God, right? Yet still subservient, just like we worship, I've mentioned this before, Prabhupada mentions this, we worship, sometimes people worry about the fact that we don't worship the demigods. Sometimes, not sometimes, very often, if you go to Indian families' homes and you go into their puja room, it's a smorgasbord of persons. Right? There'll be grandma and grandpa, mum and dad, a few gurus, whatever, a few demigods. Yeah. So there's a concern. Why? Why aren't we worshipping? There's no demigods here. Sometimes I've had persons come to me and say, "Where's Ganesh?" Because traditionally Ganesh is worshipped to remove all obstacles, right? So why don't we worship Lord Ganesh? To remove obstacles in our path of bhakti. Why don't we do that? Does anybody know what the answer to that question is? Anybody know? Say. Yeah, Krishna in particular. Gopa? Huh? Yeah. Actually, we worship. Ganesh worships, in the Brahma Samhita it's described how Ganesh worships Lord Nrsingadev. Right? So we go straight to the, we go to the top. But yeah, good point. The spiritual master is recognized as a representative of all of the demigods. So when we worship Prabhupada or when we worship the Guru, who's ultimately a representative of Krishna, we're automatically worshipping all of the demigods. And we get all the benefit of worshipping the demigods by worshipping the spiritual master. So, back to the question. What is the adulterating principle that changes Lord Shiva, his Shambhu's qualities, so that they act differently? And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains. It's a combination. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's English is very what's the word? Huh? Boggling? Scholarly. Yeah, it's just old English. It's a bit antique for us. We're not used to it. It's a bit like reading Shakespeare. You read Shakespeare and you think, gosh, is this English? But if you ponder the words, it's not difficult to understand. But listen to this. The first one is the stupefying quality of the deluding energy. The stupefying quality. So what does the material energy make you? Stupid. Yeah. Which is another word for ignorant. Right? Ignorant. And as is being described here, Lord Shiva, he covers everybody in the material creation with that stupefying quality of ignorance. From the longitudinal to the latitudinal, which is described here as otam and, what's the other word? Protam. A word which we see in a verse 7:7 in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Which is, what is it? Everything is strung on, everything rests on me as pearl is strung on a thread. Huh? So protam is latitudinal, otam is longitudinal, in a cloth, right? And Lord Shiva is that cloth or that covering of ignorance that covers everybody within the material creation. Very powerful, right? Very powerful. So that's one thing. The stupefying quality of the deluding energy. Hands up here if you're feeling delusional. Please raise your hands. 2, 3. Yeah, we're all feeling delusional. We're so delusional we don't even know we're delusional, right? Deluded. Right. So this is one of the adulterating principles that changes Lord Shiva from Govinda, or makes Lord Shiva, even though he's the same as Govinda, he's different. He's in touch with the stupefying effect of the deluding energy. Now listen to this one. The next adulterating principle is the quality of non-plenitude, of the marginal potency. Right? So, what does the word non-plenitude mean? And is there such a word? If you go to your dictionary and look up non-plenitude, have a guess what? What do you think happens? Nothing. It's not there. It's not there. But if you break the word down into non, which means what? If you've got non in front of a word, what does that mean? Not. Usually not. Right? And plenitude. This is a word that how often do you use the word plenitude in day-to-day conversation? Right? Well, this might even be the first time you've heard it. Plenitude. Now, you know, we have, when we have our meetings, the GBC meetings, we have what we call plenary sessions. Right? Plenary session. And a plenary session means when all of the members are present. Right? So plenitude means when all of the features or all of the characteristics are present within for example, the personality of Godhead. Right? But then the non-plenitude of the marginal potency refers to the character of us, the living entities. Right? So we have, or we can have, up to 50 qualities of Krishna manifest in our character. Right? So the plenary manifestation, or the full plenitude of Krishna, is how many qualities? 64. Of Lord Vishnu or Narayan? 60. Of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, how many? 55. And of the living entities? 50. And that's only when there's purity. Right? These characteristics will be manifested. Very interesting, right? So the non-plenitude of the marginal potency is the 50 characteristics of the pure living entity. Of course, the characteristics of the living entity covered by Lord Shiva's mode of ignorance is a lot less, right? Right? So that's an effect that changes Lord Shiva's sameness with Krishna. Remember, he's the same, but he's also different. That's that's one of the features that changes his influence over the living entities who are subject to the power of the mode of ignorance. Right? He's also slightly influenced by that potency. It's a potency of Krishna. Right? What is it? Mama, what's that verse? How the material energy is impossible to overcome? Daivi hiesha gunamaye mama maya duratyaya. Yeah. Mayamitam. Yeah. Anyway, I know it. You've got it. I've forgotten it. I'm covered by the mode of ignorance. Okay, so this is interesting. What makes Lord Shiva Lord Shiva? Right? that touch of the deluding potency. He doesn't forget that he's a servant of Krishna, but still the interaction with Lord Shiva and the mode of ignorance has a special effect on the living entities. So they're deluded. And they forget, he doesn't, but they forget that they're servants of Krishna. Right? And there's a manifestation of not all of the full, even though he's Krishna, he doesn't have all of the qualities of Narayan. So what makes, we need to understand what makes Shiva special, but also different. And sometimes, for the devotee, or for me anyway, not familiar with, I was not brought up with understanding these concepts, trying to work out Lord Shiva is a bit of a challenge, right? And and then the next one is, which makes him, which is a characteristic of a devotee actually, is a slight degree of the ecstatic cognitive principle of the plenary spiritual potency. Right, so what does that mean? What do you think? Anybody like to say what that means? What do you think that means? I'll say it again. Listen carefully. Are you awake? Or influenced by by Lord Shiva? So listen to this. So we've got the stupefying quality, the influence of the material energy, the quality of non-plenitude, in other words, it doesn't have all of the qualities of Lord Vishnu. But what's the positive characteristic here? A slight degree of the ecstatic cognitive principle of the plenary spiritual potency. Three things, right? Ecstasy, cognition. What does that mean? Cognition. What do we call that broadly? Knowledge, yes. So ecstasy, knowledge, coming from what? The plenary spiritual potency. Plenary spiritual potency. What does that mean then? The full spiritual potency, the full spiritual energy. But just a slight touch. Which is why Lord Shiva is understood, what is it? Vaishnavanam yata shambhu. Right? There's the influence of the deluding energy and the influence of the fact that he's not fully Narayan, right? But he exhibits symptoms of devotion, bhakti, right? Why? Because of the slight touch of the full spiritual energy manifest in cognition, right? Knowledge, and what's the other one? Ecstasy. Shiva Sukha Narada Preme Gada Gada. Right? Who's at Lord Chaitanya's, who's at the 7 o'clock Aarti? Right? Who's at the 7 o'clock Aarti? Lord Shiva, Sukadev Goswami, and Narada Muni, right? And what are they doing? Their voices is choked up with ecstasy. Right? So we see that, even though Lord Shiva has that, that tinge, if you like, that's converted him from milk into yogurt, right? And so the action of yogurt is very different. It curdles all milk. Right? So similarly, Lord Shiva, the influence of the mode of ignorance puts everybody into ignorance, right? It's the stupefying, deluding potency, right? And that covers even the 50 qualities that the living entities have, right? But he's still potent because he has those 55, special person, right? And he's a devotee. And so he has those symptoms of ecstasy. He likes to chant Hare Krishna. Huh? Prabhupada was at a program in England at one of the halls, can't remember the name of the place. And Prabhupada said to the devotees, did you see Lord Shiva? Maybe it was at the temple in Soho Street. I think in Soho Street they have a bed or a chair for Lord, no, I think it's a bed for Lord Shiva. Right? Because Prabhupada said he's present here in the kirtan. Right? So Lord Shiva is a very special, so because of that special qualities, those special qualities that he has as the guna avatar, he's all-pervading, all-present, he knows everything, he's fulfilling everybody's desires as a super soul, albeit under the influence of the mode of ignorance. That's what the material world is all about, right? Because of that, he's an exceptionally powerful personality. And so therefore, Maharaja Bhagirath is pacifying Ganga Mata. That Lord Shiva is powerful enough to carry the force Darayishyati, right? Vegam, Darayishyati te vegam, your force. Lord Shiva can rudras tvatma saririnam. So Bhagirath is assuring Mother Ganga that you don't have to go directly to the hellish planets, but Lord Shiva, the powerful, all-pervading Lord Shiva can carry the weight of your waves as you enter into the material world. Yeah. So I think that's about it from me. Yeah. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Prabhuji.
So it is mentioned here that Lord Shiva represents the super soul in the embodied soul.
Yes, that's interesting.
Kshirodakshay Vishnu is also doing the same thing. Like Kshirodakshay Vishnu, we understand that is the super soul in the embodied soul.
Yes. So what does that mean?
Yeah, how we can reconcile these?
There's
like
two. There must be two super souls. Right? Or two personalities doing the same job. Right? So obviously a lot of cooperation. This is a feature of the spiritual world. Cooperation. Not competition. Right? Cooperation. That's a good question. Right? We'll ask, I think we can ask, we'll get the AI machine out and ask it. How do we reconcile the notion that Lord Vishnu is the Paramatma and Lord Shiva is the Paramatma? Now it can be done, right? Because they're both expansions of Lord Vishnu, or ultimately of Krishna, right? And so, you know, for different purposes, like broadly, and in the Bhagavad Gita, what does Krishna say? Brahmayan Savabhutanam Riddesha Arjuna Tishtati, right? I'm situated within everybody's heart as a super soul. But he can be manifest as the Supersoul, as Lord Vishnu and as Lord Shiva at the same time and combine the functionality of the two together. He can do that, right? Conceivably he could do that. But I don't know the answer to your question, to be honest. Gopa, any thoughts on that? How does Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu perform the function of the Supersoul together? And it may be that the answer is, this is inconceivable. Right? Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. They're the same, but different. And they perform the same function. And especially Lord Shiva, with that influence of ignorance, right? Lord Vishnu is going to be the influence of goodness. Lord Shiva is going to be the influence of ignorance. And where the spirits are, where the living entities are pursuing activities under the influence of the stupefying, deluding potency, right? That's where Lord Shiva takes over, right? And I'm speculating here, but this is speculating based on what we know from Shastra, right? And it's also ordained by Lord Vishnu, right? Who's the ultimate controller. But when it comes to the mode of ignorance, Lord Shiva's department. Right? That's conceivable, right? Inconceivable, but we can think of it. Hare, maybe you can shed some light on this mystery.
I had a question.
A question? Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the detailed explanation. My question was, if Lord Shiva, he's likened to a cloth of ignorance over the conditioned souls.
Who?
Lord Shiva.
Yes, yeah, go on.
So, if he is like a cloth of ignorance over us, and we have forgotten that we are the servants of Krishna. So then, how does one become a devotee and then again understand that he is the servant of Krishna? Is it because of the tinge of ecstasy that Lord Shiva experiences?
Ooh. I don't think so. What we're taught is that devotional service is reawakened primarily through the association of the devotees, right? And it's interesting you mention that, because in the rest of the purport from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he explains how Lord Shiva, through various tantric and even through the Mayavad philosophy, he's gradually elevating people up to the point where they can embrace bhakti. But broadly, that bhakti is nourished and nurtured in the association of the devotees. And of course, Lord Shiva is a devotee. But his service to Lord Vishnu or to Krishna is to keep everybody in ignorance, and with Durga as his companion. And so he's then described as the controller of the material creation. He's the master of Durga, who's got everybody entrapped, right? But Lord Shiva does have he's a devotee. He has devotional qualities and devotional characteristics. And so, broadly, when people do worship Lord Shiva, and they get some benefit from that association, right? But because the inclination of most is towards ignorance, it's degrading, right? But where there's that opportunity to associate with the devotional side or the devotional characteristics that Lord Shiva has, there's benefit, right? But broadly, it's described in our what is it? Brahmanda bhumite kona bhagavana jeev, Guru Krishna prasad poi, bhakti lata bij. We get Krishna's mercy when we meet the devotees. Yeah. And what happens when people worship Lord Shiva? Often they treat him as if he's a separate personality of Godhead, which is aparad. Right? That's why we need the devotees to remind us. No, yeah, no, yes. This is Australian, right? Yeah, nah. Yeah, nah. What does that mean? It means conditional yes. Conditional yes. So most people, when they worship Lord Shiva, they think of him as a separate to Vishnu, right? But when we come in the association with the devotees, we learn to understand that Lord Shiva is not separate and is subservient to Lord Krishna, ultimately. That's why the Brahma Samhita is such a fantastic book for us, or such a wonderful set of prayers, because all of these features of the various personalities within the creation are all described clearly and elucidated by Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur in a very, the language is a little archaic, but all of the principles of that personality, of that character, and their potencies is teased out, right? So when we meet the devotees and we understand Lord Shiva is Krishna ultimately, an expansion of Krishna with a special purpose, right? Without that association, without that understanding, people misunderstand the personality, even the devotees misunderstand the personality of Lord Shiva. But broadly, our benefit is from Lord Shiva's mood of service to Krishna, and that's manifest in the character of all devotees. So we get benefit from them more often than... my friends used to tell me, you can smoke ganja and then you offer that to Lord Shiva. I don't know why, but that's what they used to say. Not very good association, by the way. But see, that's interesting. That's the mode of ignorance. Yeah, mode of ignorance is very powerful. Very, very powerful. But we can overcome it by following in the footsteps of Lord Shiva. That's worship Krishna. Then we get up, we elevated above the mode of ignorance. Prabhuji.
You mentioned the second point where it said that Supremacy to Shambhu is subservient to Govind. Prabhu, you mentioned one point before this. Is it possible to kindly repeat that point, because I missed noting it from the notes, I think.
Since I read it, it should be still there.
Yes.
I said, Shambhu is not a second, this is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Shambhu is not a second Godhead, right? Mm-hmm. Those who entertain such discriminating sentiment commit a great offence. And then the next statement is, Shambhu is subservient to Govinda.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Right? That's it.
He's
a servant, like all of us. And this is interesting, isn't it? Because you see, servitude is manifest in all of even in Krishna, right? Krishna likes to take birth as Radharani, to taste the mood of service. What's Balaram's mood? Servant. Adulterating, right? In the Panchatattva. Lord Chaitanya wanted to worship and honour Adulterating, right? Because he was a senior. He was his senior, right? But did Adulterating appreciate or like that? No, they used to fight. They would fight over who would serve the other. So that mood of service is a characteristic naturally found in practically all living entities, living beings, because ultimately it comes from Krishna. And so we see it in, we shouldn't be surprised to see it in Lord Shiva also. Sibya.
Thank you.
Give Sibya the microphone. You have to talk clearly and slowly, Sibya.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the nice class. Prabhu, you were talking about the qualities that a jiva has. So I wanted to ask, how many qualities does a jiva need to have in order to go back home, back to Godhead?
He's already back home, back to Godhead. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He doesn't go back home, back to Godhead, he's already there.
I was talking about like us, a jiva, how many, yeah.
For us, not Lord Shiva. Well, you can only have 50, right? And you may not manifest them all at one time, right? Because one of them was all-knowing, right? When are you and I going to manifest that characteristic or quality? So you may manifest all 50, but according to my reading, you don't have to have all of them to go back home, back to Godhead. They manifest when you're a pure devotee, right? And they can be manifested any time because, you know, pure devotional service is manifest in the character of a sadhaka. And gradually it expands and expands and expands. So I don't think there's, it's not like a report card. So at school, tick, 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 okay, pass. These things, they'll manifest appropriately at the time that it's required, not that you've got to walk around all the time all powerful. Right? But the qualities will manifest in the character of a devotee as required. Okay, thank you. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Lord Shiva ki jai. Bhagirath Maharaja ki jai. Mother Ganga ki jai.